Long live SADTU, long live! Thank you, Comrade President. That's the real authority of SADTU. I had no authority. Comrade Deputy President, Comrade Mabuto Kele, thank you very much for giving us this time to share our thoughts with our mighty union, our teachers' union, SADTU. Let me extend greetings to our President, Comrade Mapaila, and General Secretary, President Dr. Mugwena Maluleke, one of our own. The entire members of the NOBs and former leaders of SADTU present here, including all of you guests and delegates of SADTU, plus the student leadership of SADTU. Comrade Dube, I give you my hat. Great respect, keep it up, and you are collective. I'm very much inspired. Nomabangang Bulala, they can't kill the seeds of the revolution in this country. It's deep. Siyabonga SADTU for pulling this together. No pala. Sibonga kakhulu. Let me greet the leadership of the ANC, led by Comrade Paul Mashatile, the Deputy President, who addressed us here, and all the ANC delegates. And greet President Zingi Swalosi and Comrade Solipeto, General Secretary and President of COSATU, and all leaders of COSATU present here, including COSATU affiliates. And the leadership of the SACP, led here by Comrade Matala Masuku, and other members of our CC, and all party cadres present here. In the leadership of SANCO, and indeed of our student chapter, and the rest of the broad alliance formations, our international guests and local guests, especially our guests who are from the international level, particularly from the front line of war and the genocidal war and attack by apartheid Israel on the people of Palestine. We give them special ovation, our comrades from Palestine. They come from a war situation to bring solidarity to this Congress. We equally extend our solidarity to the people of Lebanon, the people of Beirut, the one that we named our section in Togoza after in the 80s. They are being attacked relentlessly by this stooge state of Israel, but is acting on the instructions of the Americans. And indeed, let me recognize my dear old friend present here, Comrade President. I know he has no protocol here. Malombo Shkwambana. We took an oath underground when I was in the party underground work. I worked with him. He was also my teacher. I recognize him. He has crossed the floor. He has committed class suicide. He's on the other side. But I recognize his efforts during the most difficult time. Comrade Malombo, you are recognized, and all other comrades that are present here. Comrade President, this Congress takes place under a very crucial theme. Just to emphasize it, that beyond the importance of foundational learning in our education system, as well as functional skills, we want to add conceptual skills. And above all, we want to make it essential that education in our country, as led by SADTU, must rupture the exploitative capitalist system. It must destroy capitalism from inside and destroy the neoliberal articulation of education. When education It's meant to serve the rich, not society. And for the working class, we are very proud of you, comrade, that you include in your theme, revolutionary professionals. This is extremely important. And equally, when we talk about inclusive and sustainable economic growth, it's not the same as the one propagated by bourgeois institutions that are dominating the world economy today. That is the imperialist forces. They dominate this institution in order to maintain and deepen the exploitative nature of capitalism and to sustain the paradigm maintenance of capitalism. It is in this context that we understand your inclusive and sustainable economic growth. It's about saving the economy from the minority that are dominant today and including everybody in the economy, the exploited majority of our people. But capitalism, when it talks about inclusion, it wants to exploit all of us. That is why this system has to be demolished completely, especially in our country. We want to say, comrades, capitalism only survives from disparity in income distribution, from expropriation of production of work by labor. And under the capitalist system, workers are exploited continuously in order to sustain a capitalist economic growth. We don't need a capitalist economic growth. We need a people's economic growth in our country so that we can kill poverty and unemployment in our country. Our stock exchange, it's full of trillions of money, and yet our people are living in difficult conditions with no food. Majority of them sleep in hunger. Whereas the rich, every single day, most of them are dying from overeating. It is therefore, comrade, reasonable that we should expect this Congress of SADTU to qualitatively talk about the pursuit of a socialist society as your theme states and challenge the dominant capitalism of today, which is neoliberalism, and its notions. One of the fundamental problems of neoliberalism today, neoliberalism is modern capitalism. Neoliberalism's main task, or the modern capitalist duty today, is to appropriate the power of the public sector, the power of the state, so that all social services, all services that are provided by the state are provided by corporations who are unaccountable to the people, who also commodify the services that everyone must have access to. That is why we must confront and defeat capitalism in our country. You can have the richest country in the world, the United States, just counting only its debt. It has 35 trillion US dollars in debt of its budget. The African continent as a whole combined, the GDP is less than 5 trillion US dollars. There in that country, beyond that debt plus its 21 trillion economic budget, they still cannot end poverty because this money is concentrated in the hands of the minority few who would not want to share with society. We even have one chap there who was born in this country, Elon Musk, is one of the richest guys in the world. Is worth more than 50 African countries combined. They say he's possibly going to be the first trillionaire in the next 10 years. What are you going to do to be a trillionaire with such kind of money when the people are suffering worldwide? This is the problem of capitalism. Therefore, this system has to be removed. We have seen the high crisis levels of poverty in our society. as well as inequality. Comrade President, you gave a wonderful speech here today. I said to the General Secretary, they must make your speech available for reprint in our own publications. In your speech, Comrade President, you analyzed extensively the conditions that the liberation movement found itself today after the recent elections. I want to summarize what you said in one sentence. The problem is neoliberalism. You can't give people more capitalism in order to solve their problems. Capitalism lives on the misery of the majority. It doesn't resolve their problems. So if you look into our government system, after we jettisoned or we kicked out RDP in 1996, yes, 1996, and we introduced the gear policy, then started the decline of South African economy. Any other policy that we implemented thereafter has never improved the living conditions of the majority. It has almost been winding back the achievements of the liberation movement, the many social achievements that we have made that Comrade Zingis was talking about. Whereas in education, in housing, in electrification and water provision and everything else. The crisis we have in ESCOM starts from that time when neoliberalism kicked in our country. We then also had Asgiza and several others. None of them have resolved our problems because all of them were predicated, were foundation on the system of capitalism. Capitalism thrives on inequality. So for us to move forward, for us to turn a page, to turn a corner, we need to do away with neoliberalism in our country. We need to start first by taking over the control of monetary policy, that is money policy. How do you have money policy that says the government has no money and yet you are the producer of money? Because the US says so. They say you must peg this money with gold. The US stopped pegging of money with gold in 1972, way back. But they still insist that we must do so today. Therefore, you can never have a monetary policy that can tackle the crisis in education. You know, during COVID, President Mgwena Maluleke of Education International, congratulations, good achievement. I wrote you a letter, a special letter. You can publicize that letter, Comrade Mgwena. We wrote it from their hearts to appreciate this achievement you have made. And yet, one minister here, when we are having our own achieving so much at international level, being recognized by the entire world, instead of working together, they seek to sideline the union SADTU. SADTU will never be sidelined by any minister here in this country. There's no one who can achieve that. Even those workers in the Western Cape that are already been threatened, we're going to fight side by side with SADTU until all of those workers are returned to work. This for us is do or die. There's no one who will come here and play with the life of workers, more especially under these living conditions. To grind them in these wheels of capitalism, we will never accept that. This minister should be happy. I've got a good partner who has massive work and networks internationally to transform and improve education. But because of their capitalist ideology, the ideology of the bosses, the ideology of the supremacist, white racist, the DA, she isolates SADTU. She even undermines our president. If the president has the guts to say he appoints these ministers constitutionally according to the powers given unto him, this one should not be minister anymore. You cannot have a minister so defiant and yet she keeps the office. On what basis? On what justification? There's no need for such. I think, comrades, it is important to say the austerity measures. Austerity means budget cuts. That's what it means. Budget cuts of social services by neoliberal book. That's what they say. Now, the point I wanted to raise before this point, Comrade Chair, is that during COVID-19, the government of India wrote off over 350 billion US dollars of money that they invested in education, that they borrowed education in India to build good schools, high quality schools, and improve education from early childhood up to tertiary level. The government is able to write this thing off. Here, we continue to cry about a backlog of infrastructure in African communities, in poor communities, in rural areas. The Reserve Bank, that is the custodian of our monetary policy, doesn't care about what happens in those areas. They are waiting for instruction from the IMF and the World Bank. We need to take back the Reserve Bank into the hands of revolutionaries and use it as a tool of transformation and change. It's the same as the fiscal policy, which is the budget policy. We have a minister that doesn't care about the well-being of the working class. Atmara, when he concedes to some demands of the working class at Nyabazama, asifuna ukuzanywa. We want appropriate allocation of funds to the public sector and to strengthen the public sector. And workers must be properly paid in the public sector. And for that matter, when he makes these remarks, it's just after when government had come from reneging on an agreement with the public sector workers. During the most difficult time, during the period of COVID-19, you are just demonstrating here many of our comrades that we lost who were on the front line like you teachers. We sent all our children to you with their illnesses every single day, endangering your lives. You stood firm. But it's neoliberalism. It was not the ANC speaking. It was neoliberalism speaking. Simply saying, there's no money. There must be budget cuts. Some of the departments I've seen, some of these ministers that have been calling neoliberalism under government of national unity, which will be my last point to speak about, Comrade Chair, have been saying, no, we can't, this minister in Home Affairs. This minister says, I can't believe that the government here, you only have 40% staff capacity. But when he was that side, every single day he was saying we need a lean state. When we see long queues in Home Affairs, people blame workers and say these workers are not doing their jobs. In every other public sector, they don't say the workers are understaffed and overworked all the time. Some of them don't even take breaks. When we say so, they don't listen to us. And the addicts inside our own movement, neoliberal addicts, they implement this policy without looking back. That is why, Comrade President, your single answer in your analysis of why we lost these elections is neoliberalism. It is neoliberalism that denied our people electricity, that denied our people water services, that made our living conditions run of sewage all over. Coupled with its own inherent corruption, because capitalism as a system is thinking it's corrupt. There's no way in the world where capitalism is not corrupt. Even in the USA itself, the current president or the former president in the USA has gone into, is in court on the basis of corruption. Even this current one who's outgoing, Biden, his own family and everything else, they see political office as a platform to strike deals for themselves. That's why they go to war all the time, so that the corporations behind them, whether it's the oil industrial complex or the defense industrial complex, must benefit all the time. We should not allow this thing to happen here in our country. We must fight against neoliberalism. At the same time, Comrade Chair, it is important to say that SADTU played a critical role in the recent elections. As part of COSATU, as well as the entire alliance, we want to thank you once more for supporting our work in the elections. Comrade from SADTU, Mapaila, siyabonga kakhulu. When we were stranded with no capacity, we came to you, and you were very helpful to us in order to do the elections work. At the same time, comrades, we want to condemn and reject this notion that members of SADTU should be banned from participating to officiate in elections, like all other public servants and individuals that are organized to do so. We say to the IEC, this is discriminatory and it must be stopped. The people with capacity must be allowed to run these affairs. We have seen the chaos in African communities, for instance, with what they try to do. Bringing inexperienced people who did not even know the law, some of them. That we accepted the outcome, Comrade President, was largely because of our love for peace and to respect the outcome of democracy. And that whatever happens should not have taken away the broad mandate of the people. But we must also say to IEC, you need to go and check your systems. Why do you continue to use systems that are technology of Israel, that we are in conflict with? This is unacceptable. That technology should not be used going forward in our elections. Coming with the next local government election, it should have been changed. You can't be an adversary of a country and use its own technology. It's unacceptable. At the same time, comrades, we lost these elections. We say we suffered a strategic defeat as a movement. But when we were in the campaign, we had other forces that were campaigning against us. For example, when we campaigned for the national minimum wage across the board, the DA campaigned against it. When we campaigned for the national health insurance, the DA campaigned against it. When we campaigned for the transformation content of education, leading to what we call the Bella Bill, the DA campaigned against it. On the contrary, they campaigned for privatization of education. That is why, on the day we convened the May Day, the DA marched to COSATU House, the headquarters of COSATU. Yabona, President, basitelela kabi laba bantu. Ubona ukuthi ngempela ubulungu bubuyile. They were lucky to have chosen that day that they knew we were all in the rallies. I dare say they should have arrived there when we were there in our headquarters. We are headquartered at COSATU House, which we are very proud to be. They said COSATU and its allies are the ones that are responsible for unemployment in this country. What a blue lie. The media regurgitated this thing. What's happening in the media, in the political desk of the media? That the political officers, the editors, do not know a truth and a lie. It's unbelievable. But it's not surprising. The media was brought into this thing to remove the movement from political office, together with their imperialist allies. That's the truth. At the same time, comrades, when we went to post-elections after we lost, we then had a setup by government of this government of national unity. We rejected it on principle. The first thing is that this should have allowed the alliance movement to reflect on the outcomes of elections, to correct our own mistakes. At the same time, not allow us to go and work with the enemy. Instead, to undergo deep self-introspection. But primarily, clear ourselves from the control and any obligation towards capital. Whatever we have conceded to capital, now that capital entered the political terrain and wanted to remove the liberation forces, we had no further obligation to capital by any means possible. If you want to prove that capital entered the political terrain, go and check the third quarter and the fourth quarter of the IEC political party funding. You will see where the money of the Oppenheimers was going. On these 2 quarters, between February and end of June, they were given all parties opposed to the ANC. They are the one that set up the Moonshot Pact, capital. So much that the ANC knows, and it must tell the truth, even in these negotiations of the GNU, in some instances, the DA was negotiating for other parties, including the IFP. On what basis does it have authority on other organizations? Because capital was funding all of them. They were one thing. BOSA, Rise Mzansi, IFP, DA, all of them funded by one main source, 2 key components, the Oppenheimers and their friends, to remove the African National Congress. Why do we allow them to continue to keep our minds? These minds do not belong to individuals, by the way, if we go through the Freedom Charter properly. But in respect of democracy, we have allowed them to do so. So what this thing represents, comrades, in ideological terms, it means there's now maturation of class contradictions in South Africa, where the point of patronizing each other has come to an end. Capital now sees us the enemy to them. Why do we want to continue to patronize capital, even when they want us out? Because they felt that the ANC can no longer guarantee them profits. The ANC had to respond to the capitalist crisis of social reproduction, in which poverty is recurring, underdevelopment is recurring in our society. We have to have a manner in which we temper with capitalist profit to respond to the needs of the people. Now they reject that. They realize that we are more vulnerable. They launch an offensive against us, using the same conditions. They say, give us more neoliberalism, and yet they do not want to account to the people. The elected officials account to the people. The biggest lesson for us is that we must never hand over public power to private entities that are not accountable to the people. This strategic setback, comrades, was also a point in which the GNU now, we can tell you, it's a rightward shift of policy. I hear the Deputy President being optimistic today that perhaps the ANC will never be defeated in this GNU. We want to take his weight together with the President. Because for as long as the primary policy of the GNU is neoliberal capitalism, there's no way in which it's going to improve the lives of the people. It's going to still regurgitate on the same step until the ANC is incapacitated to respond and fully be trusted by the people of this country. It is therefore categorically clear that the GNU will sustain the status quo, and the GNU, it's a political choice, it's an ideological choice of the neoliberal group inside our movement, and it was not a collective decision. COSATU and the SACP did not agree to this. No one should impose this thing on us. We never agree to this. If we say we never agree to this, it doesn't mean that we do not say the GNU is a reality. These are two different things, but we never agree to this. The two of us. Your federation and the Communist Party never agree to this. We are dealing with it as a reality now. Of course, we are having an alliance meeting to sort out this particular problem. It is in this regard, Comrade Chairperson, that South Africa, if we don't resolve this problem of the GNU quite soon, we will now join the international crisis of wealth capitalism, in which when the wealth capitalist system is disintegrating, we are the ones that are coming to rebuild it when it is disintegrating. Even the capitalist powers that introduced neoliberalism in the early 70s, the USA and America, they have long forgotten this thing. They are building public entities. During COVID-19, all of them relied on government, and they began to see the importance of rebuilding the capacity of the state. Here, the neoliberal addicts, they even forced government to sign pacts to borrow money from the World Bank as a political choice, not because we needed that money. I told Comrade Enoch about this thing, but he didn't care. Because we needed to have gone on the books that South Africa has also borrowed money from the IMF. So it was a political choice still. So the crisis of international capitalism, that is also the crisis of bourgeois democracy, which is also in South Africa, that is capitalist democracy. It's a crisis that we must deepen, but not enter into it. This is a crisis of liberal democracy. I mean, the liberal democracy, it is the one that is attacking the people of Palestine, a genocide that is supported by weapons and everything else on a single day by the Americans. The war in Ukraine is a continuation of the same crisis of bourgeois democracy, liberal democracy today. So we have to debate this question of the failure of liberal democracy, because we thought that liberal democracy is the best option of democracy in the world. At the same time, comrades, there are forces that are rebuilding, and BRICS, where South Africa is participating, is part of that. They are building a new multipolar world system out of this unipolar, wherein one hegemonic force, the USA and its European powers, through NATO, are controlling the world. Now we are imagining a multipolar world system. That is why the war in Ukraine, it's an imperialist war against Russia. And Russia has to win this war by all means possible. The reversal is too much for the people of the South, as well as for now a full-blown attack on China if Russia is never victorious in this war. That's how critical the world is today. We are actually led by fools. The Joe Bidens of this world. And therefore, comrades, we want to say South Africa must not be a weak point in BRICS. It must strengthen, it must not be the weak chain, the weak link. It must strengthen the BRICS countries in the de-dollarization process, in the transformation process of independence of countries. When BRICS take this decision about de-dollarization, our minister here pours cold water on it. He says, no, don't worry. That thing will take many years to come. How do you say it takes many years to come? India is already transacting with Russia on national-to-national basis. China is doing so with Russia, and Russia is doing so with China on national-to-national basis. What is the problem with this thing? Even other countries like Saudi Arabia, they are doing so with Russia on their own currencies. Why are we tying our currency to the dollar? Then we can stand up and say, we don't have money. That's another sense of weak leadership. But given the imperialist attack on the liberation movement, comrade, we have to say back home here, as we speak here today, yesterday morning, Comrade Mlungisi Makhanya, the president of People's United Democratic Movement in Swaziland, the liberation movement in Swaziland, was forcefully poisoned. Forcefully poisoned. Actually, he was to be killed. He's in the hospital as we speak. Very critical. Because South Africa, Comrade President of SNAT, our sincere solidarity with you and the people of Swaziland, under that autocracy of King Mswati. South Africa, it's allowing Swaziland to do as it pleases. Swaziland sent mercenaries here to come and kill and abduct pro-democracy activists in South Africa and take them to Swaziland or kill them, as they did to Lan Maseko. We have called for an independent investigation in this. We want to call for a speedy investigation, the activation of a 72-hour notice to find the culprit that tried to kill Comrade Mlungisi. This must be done as urgent as possible. We understand Comrade Mlungisi was able, before he collapsed, name the culprit, Comrade Zing. The state must find that culprit. And because of since yesterday, we give them as the Communist Party until tomorrow 3 o'clock to know their progress on the arrest of this person who wanted to kill our comrade. This is unacceptable. We cannot harbor mercenaries from Swaziland and yet keep proper relations with the Swazi regime. This is unacceptable. It is therefore important that perhaps this Congress must send solidarity to our comrades in Swaziland, who certainly are struggling under very difficult conditions. Your own president of SADTU and now president of SNAT has been threatened and even expelled from work just for doing union work. This is not right at all. So any collaboration with such countries must be stopped, or we embark on solidarity action, solidarity strike as the unions. In this regard, comrades, we are looking forward to work with you on practical level on the campaigns to defend the implementation of the Bella Bill, the Bella Act, to implement it across the board, to fight alongside you against austerity, for better pay for teachers, for educators, for better working conditions across the board. And indeed, comrades, for building an ideological workplace of the development of ideas in the teaching profession against the system of capitalism. It is in this regard that this Congress must reject with the contempt that it deserves neoliberal capitalism and austerity measures and sharpen class contradictions. Because without sharpening class contradictions with capital, which is neoliberalism, we will never be able to bring back the National Democratic Revolution on track. With this government of national unity is the full derailment of the National Democratic Revolution. The National Democratic Revolution in content is anti-imperialist. Anti-imperialism means anti-capitalism. Now, these things don't go side by side. We want to wish this Congress great success and SADTU great success, as well as in making sure that you can advance the interests of the National Democratic Revolution, not against them. We had a meeting with COSATU in a joint school where we sharpened our discussions about this moment. One of the things that will be discussed between our two structures is what to do with today. In other words, what to do practically when forces of oppression, our own exploiters, those who have stolen our land and our wealth, are now literally confident to kick us out of office, albeit in the name of democracy. That's the critical question on the table. This question is related with what we do with the reconfiguration of the alliance, to the extent that it has been reneged upon by our ally, the African National Congress. We shared with the comrades there, I wish it will be possible to share this thing, Comrade President. A discussion document, not a discussion document, a final document on the reconfiguration of the alliance, adopted by the Alliance Political Council in November 2019. This document was supposed to be implemented across our structures. The then Secretary General of the ANC, Ace Magashule, then said, no, let's allow this regulation, this document to go to the NGC structures of the ANC, to the NGC so that it can go through the structures of the ANC. That's the last time the ANC ever spoke about reconfiguration of the alliance. That document is very clear. Now, last year they came with some document called the renewal of the alliance, the renewal of the movement, completely deviating from the framework that took us a long time. In that framework, we developed from our Congress resolution, we developed a discussion document. COSATU developed a discussion document. The ANC developed a discussion document. SANCO made representation to the alliance verbally after its NEC meeting. We then developed a response document to the ANC document. And finally, we had a joint document of the alliance. That document must be implemented. Without the implementation of that document, comrade, the future of the alliance is in crisis. It's in crisis because the ANC can go away unilaterally and enter into deals with the class enemy of the alliance component, like they did in the GNU. And they will expect us to follow into that particular framework. It is in this regard that this question must also be properly debated and discussed. And let me assure you, comrades, if it comes to a question where it needs the role of the party, we do not wish at any point in time to destroy the alliance or to weaken any of our movement components. At the same time, it's important to say we are not afraid to stand on our own to confront neoliberal capitalism and those who have sold out the National Democratic Revolution. That point must never come. We are clear, and we think the only way, in the absence of the reaffirmation of the reconfiguration of the alliance by the ANC, that there is renege on this, not all of us, the ANC, is a consequence that now they even respect all non-entity political parties, including this party of the PA. They have more respect that party than they have to its or to their own allies. They listen more to the DA than they listen to its allies. For instance, we can put it on the table here. We did discuss cabinet. We rejected this minister taking over education. We were not listened to because the deal was made. The DA, Steenhuisen, said they bargained hard. Yes, the following day after the announcement of cabinet, he came out and said, we bargained hard and we are represented in 12 clusters of cabinet. No single alliance partner here can say we are represented in all clusters of cabinet. We participate in good faith that the ANC will take our views across the board into consideration. They don't do so, but they do so for the DA. It's high time that the ANC learn to respect its allies and the masses of this country. Amandla! Forward to socialism, forward! Thank you very much.